a year before the crisis, the Nazi Party had only collected 2.6% of the votes in the Reichstag parliamentary elections. This is provided that they were already in the care of most powerful industrialists in Germany. And after the crisis in 1913's election, the Hitler's people broke into big politics with 18% of the vote, thus becoming Germany's second largest party. The first place took the Social Democrats. The secret of the Nazis' success was quite simple. Hitler worked hard and achieved everything himself. It's capitalism. Isn't it always like that? No. Hitler was brought together with media mogul Alfred Hugenberg. We talked about him a little bit earlier. A member of the Imperial German Industry Association, an entrepreneur. Hugenberg controlled newspapers, publishing houses, telegraph, information and advertising agencies, and even film companies. On top of that, he was a member of German National People's Party, which we also talked about a little earlier. Pan-Germanism, monarchism, ultra-conservatism, ultranationalism, and of course anti-communism. Hitler was introduced to Hugenberg by Paul Bank, who was the same party member. And I don't think anyone would be surprised if we said that Paul Bank was representative of the same ultra-conservative Pan-German Union. In turn, Paul Bank was introduced to Hitler by a mad racist Heinrich Class, who in turn met Hitler himself around the end of the 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, i.e. count from the very foundation of the Nazi Party. You know, in general it is possible to film several seasons of a Brazilian soap opera based off the formation of the Nazi Party. This is really one big fascist family. You can read more about all these early intricacies in this book or this one. If we are talking about individuals who have directly contributed to Hitler's rise, General Ludendorff, a retired monarchist military who blamed his defeat in the war on the working class, and if he had won, he would surely have tales of his strategic genius. Later he became one of Hitler's companions. Together they took part in the 1923 beer hall putsch.
Next is Emil Kirdorf, steel magnate. He is also one of the founders of the Pan-Germanian Union, an ardent monarchist, imperialist hater of trade unions and any concessions to the workers, a future member of NSDAP, a businessman deeply respected by Hitler. His colleague in the industry, also a future member of Nazi Party, Fritz Thyssen, the author of the book I Paid Hitler, Confessions of the German Magnate.
Being closely associated with Anglo-French capital, Thyssen became the inspiration behind Hitler's Eastern direction. He immigrated from Germany in 1939. When the war between Hitler's Germany and Western countries broke out, in his book he explains his breakup with Hitler by not being able to organize unity of action with Western countries against the Soviet Union despite all efforts. Another mad anti-communist and heavy industry entrepreneur Ernst von Borzig, the businessman and raider Hugo Stevens, who is already known to us, is also a steel industrialist, and of course the mad racist Henry Claes. And this is hardly a complete list of those who helped Nazism to return, but we can say for sure that while the Pan-Germanian Union, together with the monarchists, formed the ideological and personal basis of the NSDAP, the large coal, iron and steel industry has brought the party financial confidence and a wide range of connections in all levels of government. By the end of 1931, Thyssen, Kirdorf and others had organized a series of meetings between Hitler and Ruhr's leading industrialists to give Hitler the opportunity to present his views and describe the benefits of working with him. In turn, Hitler sought to obtain political and financial support for the Nazi Party in the heavy industry. Nothing could be more interesting for political historians than those early meetings between the cruel, arrogant Iron Lords and the future demonic Führer. Hitler and the Ruhr magnates have found common ground in mutual hatred for democracy and worship of the ruthless authoritarian political force. The meeting on January 27 of 1932 in Düsseldorf was attended by Thyssen and Fegler from Iron Trust and many of Ruhr industrialists. Hitler gave one of the most insightful and convincing speeches which, according to Thyssen, made a deep impression on assembled industrialists, and as a result, the cash register of the National Socialist Party received large injections from industrial concerns. This is an extract from a lawsuit called USA vs. Frederick Flick. It was therefore decided in June of 1932 to make contact with Hitler and to probe his attitude towards chemical developments if he was elected Chancellor. Ultimately, a meeting was organized between representatives of IG Farben and Hitler. During this meeting, the future Führer assured all those present that he intends to provide strong and decisive support for development of synthetic fuels. Today, it is impossible to imagine an economy without oil in Germany that won't remain politically independent. German liquid fuels must be a reality, even if it requires sacrifices. 6 months later, on 20th February of 1933, the very meeting between businessmen and Hitler took place in the house of Hermann Göring, and we talked about it a little earlier. But we have not yet said anything about that meeting. For the first time, the meeting was attended personally by a representative of IG Farben, Georg von Schnitzler, a member of the board of directors as well as member of the NSDAP party since 1937. This undoubtedly made a huge impression on all business circles in Germany, as IG Farben was the largest concern in the country. We would also like to remind you that 3 million marks were collected during this meeting alone, of which IG Farben contribution was the largest, 400,000 marks. In the materials of the court there was even a statement of cash transfer. Since then, Hitler's support from IG Farben has become quite official. In the years that followed up to 1944, only IG Farben contributed over $400 million in modern equivalent to Nazi treasury. This included the so-called Adolf Hitler Foundation, initiated by a large industrialist, Gustav Krupp. Here he gives Hitler his hand with a palm down. It seems that the Führer has even leaned a little bit to show his respect and gratitude. At the end of November of 1932, the Nazis lost 2 million votes and 34 seats in the Reichstag. The party is in critical condition and in dire need of money. Apparently, there was still not enough investment, and the bourgeoisie still did not fully understand itself as a class, unlike the increasingly powerful workers, led by communists. In December, Goebbels makes a note in his diary: financial problems make all organizational work impossible. But as a result of intervention of Baron von Schröder, a nobleman and a major financier, by the way a member of the NSDAP since 1933, an alliance was formed between Hitler and the Reich Chancellor Franz von Papen, through which Hitler would enter the government cabinet and take the place of Reichstag Chancellor of Hindenburg. Von Papen, on the other hand, will be demoted to the post of Vice Chancellor. This was followed by a meeting between the Nazis and a large group of industrialists and bankers, including Flick and Gustav Krupp, at Hermann Göring's house, the second man after Hitler, on 20 February of 1933. During the meeting, German industry leaders were promised that if Hitler wins the election, democracy will be replaced by a dictatorship. The industrialists responded generously with at least 3 million Reichsmarks. This is about $15 to $20 million in modern equivalent. 1 month after Hitler's appointment as Reichskanzler, the Nazis set the Reichstag on fire and blamed the communists. Mass repressions and killings begin. A week later, special elections are held, at which the Nazi party wins, of course. Following this, a state of emergency law is being issued and bourgeois democracy is being completely abolished. Germany officially became a fascist state. An open terrorist dictatorship of business has begun. And already in 1936, Hitler personally announced the adoption of a 4-year economic development plan. More than 90% of all investments made by Nazi State Planning Committee were earmarked for the chemical industry, of which over 70% were for IG Farben. The share of business people from IG Farben was thus 2/3 of the total 4-year industrial development plan for the Third Reich. In fact, it was IG Farben's plan, not the Nazis. By the beginning of the war in 1939, IG Farben was undisputed leader in preparing the industry for war. Such an efficient and at the same time profitable economy could not but affect the minds of bourgeois ideologists and large capitalists. Already during the war we see not only the first rudiments of the future national capitalism, but also the outline of the future Goebbels' demagogy, replacing word capitalism with the word socialism, which was so popular at the time. A new type of state socialism is emerging that is completely different from what we have thought or dreamed about. The private economic initiative and the private capitalist economy will not be liquidated, but will be regulated from the point of view of state socialism, in which the concentration of capital will take place in the national economy, and this capital will have a common direction. This shift of capitalism naturally and logically demands for a reshaping of the movement that was previously a counterbalance to it, international socialism. The latter will become national socialism, whose electoral slogan will be "work, not loud phrases." Werner Dietz, German chemist, head of one of the plants of IG Farben, 1916. Werner Dietz expressed his views exactly in 1960s for some reason. At this time, the German chemical industry reached the highest concentration of capital in its history. Of course, neither Dietz, nor Steinitz, nor IG Farben, not even Adolf Hitler invented National Socialism. Nazi ideology is a perverted representation of all that German businessmen have to face in the course of their development. The acquired shortage of colonies, which has caused rapid aggression, the rapid growth of monopolies and the suppression of all competition, as well as a strong labor movement that constantly threatens the wallets of the capitalists, and finally, war as a super profitable business.